experience. It's the people that you meet. So we're here at the moment talking behind the scenes with people that maybe haven't been before, and it's amazing how things kind of come together. The people that you're supposed to meet, you end up meeting, right? It's incredible. So this week we have the amazing Danny Carlson. Welcome to the show, brother Danny.
Oh, good to be on here, man. It's been wanting to come on the show for a while, just working over there inside the co-working space and seeing this going on every Monday. So really good to be on here chatting with you, man.
Love it, man. And Danny, for those of you who don't know, he's got a phenomenal company and helps brands scale, right? So 8 figures, proven track record, proven system as well, really, on Amazon, how to get to 8 figures, which for me is phenomenal. I have another friend over here, Anatoly, who was talking me through the whole Amazon model the other day, and like it's something which I wish I would have done. Like I'm trying to. If my partner's working now, Marina, my partner, is incredible when it comes to due diligence and that just checking things out to see what's trending and all of the mechanics behind it. And I really want her to do it. God knows she'll be amazing, but not working at the moment. So Danny, like, how did it all start for you, and why did you choose Amazon?
Yeah, well, it came about in a pretty roundabout way, to be honest. The only reason I chose Amazon was because I had a near-death experience when I was racing longboards in the Philippines, and it just forced me to make a decision on where I was going to take my life direction. So at that time, I was a professional downhill skateboard racer. So living in a van, just going to different countries, and we would race downhill skateboards and make videos and stuff like that. And that was really fun. But you know, I was getting to be about 24, 25 years old, and I didn't really want to live in a van for the rest of my life, right? Making $20,000 a year. So it was kind of a wake-up call for me, because like at the time I was learning about online business. Like Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week had been percolating in my brain for maybe 6 months at that point, but I didn't really have any idea which kind of business I wanted to start. But then I had this near-death experience where I almost had a head-on collision with a motorcycle in a longboard race in the Philippines. You know, they just don't close the road very properly in the Philippines like they do in the United States or somewhere else. But yeah, it just forced me to really reconsider my life direction at that point. So I just chose Amazon FBA arbitrarily out of a whole bunch of different online business models. And as soon as I got back from that trip, I just dove into it and started learning.
And so it seems to me, right, that, you know, having met you a little bit, you know, I get this sense of you that's like you're the daredevil. I get that. The guy who's ripped to shreds, right? The person who you've got this insatiable appetite for life. That's how I see it. And knowing about the near-death experience is kind of like, okay, kind of a few things kind of add up, right? It's like near-death experience is like even more insatiable appetite. But then, you know, for something like that, so Amazon, now, if somebody maybe is looking to start Amazon, right? You said that you chose it and then you just dove deep, right? You got into it. But what types of person, in terms of mentality or approach or aptitudes, would you say that something like Amazon needs to be successful?
Yeah, well, I think the number one most important thing is having the investor's mindset. Right, because Amazon is very similar to investing, right? You put some money, let's say you have $10,000 and you stick it in an account and you're going to get a 10% return, right? If you're taking out that 10% return every single time, then your money doesn't compound or it doesn't grow as fast. Exactly the same as Amazon. So if you have that investor's mindset and you're willing to just keep pumping in the profits and the money into new team members, new products, and more inventory and everything like that, those are generally the people who do really well and can actually reach that next level, can grow to 7 figures and 8 figures.
Got it. And like, how much would you say is confidence in part of this process? And was there any defining moment where you suddenly, maybe not suddenly, but you got confident at what you're doing? Or still just there you're wondering, I don't know, I'm kind of winging it? Like, how did it work for you?
I mean, for me, it always just goes in levels, right? So like, you take a step past the comfort zone, and then you have to wait for something to happen, and then you gain the confidence back. You're like, okay, that worked out, that's good. But then there's always the next level, right? Like, it never ends. Like, at least once every 6 months, there's some other, roadblock I have to overcome in my business, and I have to do something I'm uncomfortable with, and I'm not going to be confident until actually reach that next level, and then it works out, right?
Yeah, and I mean, so if someone's watching now, right? So with this thing about confidence is so key, right? So, like you said before that, you go into that uncomfortable zone, and then you learn your lesson, and then you come back and go again to the next one, right? But for maybe if you can perhaps record a really uncomfortable experience for you, and how did you deal with it? Because there might be people here kind of asking, yeah, but I get that, but how did you do it?
Yeah, I mean, a big one that comes to mind is really hiring an operations manager. That was probably a big one. I guess maybe 2 years ago at this point, because up until that point, I was the operations manager, this is my agency, Kenji ROI. We're more than 20 full-time employees now, but at the time, I think maybe we were about 10. And that was hard to just give away control over so much of the business and just like putting the whole, like the reins in someone else's hands and everything like that, because in my mind, no one else can do it as good as I can. And I mean, I was right? And like, it's very unrealistic to expect that someone else is going to be able to jump in and be just as good as you are, or even better, if you've been doing it for so long, right? So like, that was a really big thing for me to let go of. But I mean, looking back on it, I wish I did it way sooner, right? And I wish I just pushed through that uncomfortability and that lack of confidence, and just realized that there was going to be a bit of a messy period, because looking back on it, it stopped me from growing past that point for a really solid chunk of time, like probably 6 months at least, of where I could have easily just inserted someone in there and just gone through that uncomfortable training period, and it would have been all good.
Yeah. So I mean, like, were you always like this? So like growing up, there's some people at school, and like I remember growing up at my school, there was a guy who's like, I want to be a fireman, right? I'm going to be a fireman, and he was. It's like this guy killed at being a fireman. Like, he knew what he wanted to be from such an early age, So for you, like when you were growing up, like if it wasn't what you're doing now, what would it be? Like, when did you know? How did you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was growing up, I just wanted to be either like a Lego designer or a professional extreme sports athlete, basically. And I mean, my kind of big realization was that I actually achieved, not making very much money, but I achieved being a professional downhill skateboard racer, where I could just do that for a living. And I very quickly realized that's not what I wanted to do. I kind of had ruined one of my passions by monetizing it in a way, and it was very apparent to me very quickly that it was not what I dreamed about for so many years. And so I kind of had a realization in that moment that, maybe that's not actually the path to just like find your passion and monetize your passion. Maybe it's just a better path to do something you're just really good at, and that actually is a valuable skill that you can make a decent amount of money at, and then you can use that money to go do the things you're passionate about. So I kind of flipped my philosophy around that time.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, like now, like most of it is about that, right? The I see anyway is about, what are you passionate about? I'm passionate about this. Go! Your passion will turn to profits, right? There's a course even, turn your passion into profits, right? That I've seen. Haven't done it yet. I missed it. But yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, to the fact that you said, I mean, there's one other guy called Ben, tall guy, Ben Croft, incredible guy. He's a serial entrepreneur, massive companies. He's just there, right? Executive coaches and massive business. But with him, he's similar actually. He's actually another proponent of don't necessarily do what you're passionate about. Go to the market, see what needs to be filled, and then find the skills to do it, sort of thing. That's just quite interesting. But so you're saying before that you tried your passion, you tried turning it into profits, then you realized that you were killing your passion, right? So then, if you were, maybe talking to your younger self, right, outside of that lesson, what would you say to your younger self now, knowing what you do?
I mean, I would just say to myself back then, like, just don't take it so seriously, because I really ruined one of my favorite passions, which is downhill skateboarding. Like, I still do it occasionally now and then, but I mean, ultimately, there was a lot of times where I just like didn't really even enjoy it. Like, I remember being on a film trip in Japan and just like waking up every day feeling like it was going to work. Like I used to be a carpenter on a construction site, and it felt really no different. It's like you wake up and we're going to go ride down this beautiful mountain pass with a camera strapped to the hood of a car. And like, that was my dream, right? But it just felt like a job. So I would just say to myself, don't take it so seriously. You know, this is something you're supposed to be fun. It doesn't get all of a sudden more fun now that you start making money doing it. In fact, it probably is going to be the opposite. So I just say to myself, just enjoy it, man.
Yeah, far out. And then, so mum, dad, like, so are you an only kid? Are you other siblings? What's his story?
I got one older sister.
Cool. And is she into Amazon as well, or is she doing something completely different?
No, she has her own jewelry business, like handmade jewelry that I guess she's had for like 8 or 9 years. And actually, she makes pretty decent income from that, actually. I mean, a small business, she still does pretty much all of it herself, but actually turns, you know, a better salary than your average person, and is able to go travel when she wants and only work for a certain period of the year, and it's pretty good.
Got it. And then mum and dad, so are there anything, I'm trying to get back down to this, you know, where does Daredevil gene? The Daredevil gene! Where did it come from? So like mum and dad, so were either of them into extreme sports, or were they safe, playing by the book sort of people? Like, how would you describe them?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one because actually both my parents are ex-gymnasts, and my mom actually was like at the Olympic level. She actually qualified for the Olympics, but just happened to be the year where like the Soviet Union was hosting the Olympics and Canada decided to boycott those Olympics. Yeah. But they were both very good competitive gymnasts. But my mom is actually very worrisome. Like, she does not really like extreme things. Like, in that small little context of gymnastics, she was kind of crazy. But she would always worry about me doing any other kind of crazy stuff, and like certainly nowadays is very risk averse. But my dad was always a very adventurous person, for sure. He'd always be going off and planning some really cool trips, or just doing some weird, interesting stuff. And he would always encourage me with all the crazy stuff I was doing, like building jumps in the middle of the forest, or whatever it was that I was trying out.
Love it, man. Love it. And look, guys, so those of you in the studio audience here, if you've got any questions, right, and just remember to put your hand up, and then we'll get the microphone over to you. Again, we do this very differently every week. There is no set pattern, and I'm feeling like questions will be appreciated from the audience. Kind of know there's a few people here who are quite specific in the questions that they have. So now, going in towards Amazon, so I get that, you know, that both parents were like out there, because you do, is it acro gymnastics or something?
Acro yoga, yeah, I used to be really into that, but you know what, COVID kind of just threw a big wrench in the middle of that, right? It's not the most social distancing friendly thing to do, so haven't really been doing that for the past year very much, but instead just been doing a lot of riding dirt bikes, and sport bikes is kind of what's filled that void. Yeah,
well, what I love about your life, mate, is that you've managed to find the best of both worlds, is what it sounds like, right? So, you know, your passion, you've kept to be your passion, so then there's this sense of like this, what is it? It's unlimited enjoyment possibility, right? And you found this thing that you're really good at, and you can scale big time, right? So getting into the scaling, so tell us a little bit about the Kenji ROI, how it came about, and what was the thought behind it, and has it reached where you thought it would?
Yeah, well, that's the funny thing, is that Kenji ROI was actually like the pivot, and it was the backup plan for my failed business in the first place. So, I mean, how I learned how to do all this stuff on Amazon was I started off selling my own products on Amazon. Yeah. And for the first 6 months of doing that, that went really well, actually, and it got it up to good level of monthly revenue. And then I'm a risk-tolerant guy. I was really aggressive, and I just like went to town with like, okay, so this is working. I got some good products. I'm gonna go get a loan, and then I'm gonna go get a bunch of new products. And I'm just gonna expand this thing as fast as I possibly can. Which, I mean, in some situations is good, but in this situation, it was just terrible timing, because I got my Amazon account suspended right as I was like maximum leveraged out, and then. Yeah, I mean, it was a scary time. Amazon held on to a payment, like right at the end of one of the payment cycles for 90 days. And then I just like emptied all my bank accounts to pay for more products and more suppliers and everything like that. So it was a scary time for sure. And like I ended up getting a lot of that sorted out. Like certainly that lost a lot of money in that scenario. But at the end of the day, like I just really my risk tolerance level went from extreme to like a little bit more realistic. And to hedge my risk a little bit, I just put more of my efforts into what is now Kenji ROI, the agency. So mixing the business models of Amazon and then services for Amazon sellers. So, I mean, it's kind of the backup plan. I never really intended it to be a company like it is today with 20 employees, but that's kind of where it went.
I love, like the thing that pops in my head is that, so I'm a little bit of an adventurer in some ways, right? I love bikes. I didn't know how to ride a motorbike, so I was on like a BMX mountain bike. but there's this part, right, where, even today, like hopefully my partner isn't watching, but even today where I'm on the road, and then I believe that I'm really aware of what's on the road, who's around me, and all the rest of that, and I'm pretty good with skill balancing and all the rest of that. But there was one where I came around this corner, and there was a stone or something which I didn't even see, and the front wheel slid out, but brought it back. And I don't think it was me bringing it back, being honest, right? I don't think it was me. It happened so fast, right, that there was no time to react. So it's almost like there's some kind of guiding hand who's like, not today. You know what I mean? Like, you will not fall today on your bike, right? So firstly, for you being this sort of a person, so spiritually, like where is it that you sit? Like, do you believe that, like, in a way there's some kind of guiding, because this was is your backup plan, right? So is there some kind of guiding force that's kind of been around you ever since you're doing maybe I don't want to put too many words in your mouth, that near-death experience, or is it something that you think, well, no, it's all about what I plan and what I do?
Yeah, I mean, I would fall somewhere in the middle of that. Like living in Bali for a couple of years, I have done a lot of the spiritual stuff and spiritual exploration. But for me, I go very much in seasons. So like, maybe I'll do a 6-month period where I'm very much into meditating every single day and, going to some spiritual events in Ubud and things like that. But then I'll do a 6-month period of I'm just going to work super hard, and then like I won't even meditate for, a month at a time and stuff like that. So I very much flip-flop, kind of like seasons based on kind of where I'm at mentally, right? Like right now, I'm hardcore in a just focus and work mode because I have some really important projects to complete in my business and take it to the next level, right? But like, certain points, like, a year and a half ago when I broke up with my last girlfriend, it was like very much just, taking a step back and doing a lot of meditation and like spiritual work and stuff like that. So when it comes to like, do I think that, is there some kind of person looking over you or things like that? I don't necessarily believe in that, but I do think it is very important to be in touch with the spiritual side. Yeah. Because for me, it's all about like listening to you actually, how you truly feel and everything like that. There's so many influences around myself and around everybody that sometimes it's hard to actually know what you really want and what, if you're acting a certain way just to like please your employees or your partner or like what society expects of you and stuff like that. So I think those spiritual practices, for me, it really helps me get in touch with that.
Got it. And would you say that those practices help you in your work, like help you scale Kenji ROI, help you deal with customers, even help you deal with staff?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like especially with the really tough business decisions, a lot of the time it's stressful, right? Like you're CEO and there's there's your employees' payroll and all this other stuff and the profitability of the company all on the line, and your own personal reputation and everything. So a lot of these decisions can be very stressful, but I find that if I just meditate on something and just really calm down and get in touch with that, then the right decision becomes really obvious. Wow. Right? It's like it can be very chaotic when you're actually stressed out, but I mean, yeah, just a little meditation will make it super clear for me.
Yeah. And how do you meditate, if I ask you?
I've tried all sorts of different stuff. Like, I did transcendental meditation training and stuff like that. But and I've tried so many things. But what I'm currently doing right now is it's a device called HeartMath, which is kind of interesting. Is HeartMath sensor you like clip onto your ear, and it'll measure your heart rate variability. And that's just it's an interesting way to meditate because you're sitting there staring at a screen, and it gives you real-time feedback about how good of a job you're doing at your meditation, basically. So that, I'm finding that really interesting at the moment.
Yeah, because that's about like bringing in love, right? You can see it on the screen. It's like, thinking about love thoughts. It's like, I'm thinking about love, and you're looking at it. It's like, yeah, I feel deeply in love, and you look at your screen. It's like, ain't no loving going on here, brother. You're like, damn it. And then you get love. It's like, what the heck? This is not doing as I wanted to do. The heart math is great. I tried that. I was doing that first, maybe 10 years ago or something. The early where it was attached to like a sensor on your finger, and it was amazing. A lady called Isabel Senery in Sydney. That was phenomenal. I didn't even know that was even here. How good is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're a lot more affordable now. Like you can go buy a Bluetooth sensor for I think $200 and just download an app on your phone instead of having to get this whole computer set up and all this crazy stuff.
God dang. So then getting on to maybe why some people are watching, right? So like, for example, me, right? I'm like an Amazon newbie, right? I've got no idea. So if there were maybe 5 or 6 or more steps for the absolute beginner to get into Amazon, what would they be? How would you advise them? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got to start with step 1. You have to have a good foundational product. So what that means is you need to have a good quality product in the right market at the right price. So if you don't have that, it doesn't really matter how good of a job you do with everything else. You're just, in certain situations, it's going to be impossible, right? So let's break that down. First, like a good product. So is your product relative to the other available options, is it actually a good quality product? Right? That really matters. And it can be a lower quality product if the price is also down what's appropriate for those lower priced products, right? But it has to be good because Amazon is a comparison shopping engine. That's one really important point here is, if someone types in microphone into Amazon, they're going to be presented with lots and lots of options. So you need to stand out compared to them. Number 2 is you have to be a good product in a good market. So if the market is everyone on page 1 of the search results is selling $1 million, $2 million, $3 million a month of their product, then for you to actually compete with them, you're going to have to spend a similar amount that they're spending on their advertising. For the inventory is a big one on Amazon. Like if your competitors are selling 10,000 units a month and it costs $5 a unit for you to produce that product, then do you have $50,000 to spend on your inventory plus the marketing cost plus all the other costs that go along with that? If you don't, then you shouldn't enter that market. And then the third component to that is price. It's again a direct comparison against the other options. Like if someone else is selling a pretty similar product to yours at a much lower price, you're just not going to win, right? People can see that same product right next to yours for the lower price. Why are they going to buy yours, right? So that's the first foundational piece. You need to have the right product in the right market for the right price. And then number 2, the second foundational piece is your listing optimization. So that's things like Amazon SEO, so to speak. So are you optimized for the right keywords? Do you have really good images of your product? Do you have a good product listing? That's a whole thing that my agency's been focused on for the past 5 years. But the real key points there are, 1, is your product actually attractive? Like, can you make it look good through the images and everything like that? And then 2, this is the one that is most difficult, that people most commonly get wrong. Your key info optimization. Are you showing the customers the most important information they need to make their buying decision about the product? So like a great example of this is gluten-free, right? If someone is searching for a gluten-free product, they're not going to click on anything that isn't obvious that it's gluten-free, right? They're going to scroll the search results, and if it's not super clear within the first little bit of the title or the main image, like that very limited information that's there on the search results page, probably not going to click, right? So that applies to, especially the main image and the title, but then also your other images and the rest of your pictures. Is that most important information really easy for your customers to see? And it's easier said than done because it's very hard to identify exactly what that most important information is, and then where to place it in your listing. So that's a really big piece. And the other kind of piece of listing optimization is the same as Google SEO, keyword optimization, right? That's just telling Amazon's algorithm what your product is relevant for. So if lots of people are searching for, if microphone is your product, then lots of people are probably searching for, podcasting mic, for example, right? So if you don't have the word podcasting mic inside of your listing or in your back-end keyword fields, then Amazon doesn't necessarily know that you're a podcast mic or that you're relevant to that search term. So that's got to be done in a very systematic and methodical way as well.
Got it. There's some few things in there. I'm like, my head is kind of like spinning a little bit. Optimization, got it. Optimization, got it. Optimization is key. Mamma mia. So then with your company, so you've obviously been through different stages, right? Because I think from memory, was it 721 different brands or like, so it's a lot of brands, right? It's a lot of brands, man. So like which sorts of challenges did you face maybe mentally when it was, coming to scale this up? As you said before, initially it was like a hedge. Initially it was like man, if all things screw up, I guess I can do that, right? And then that thing began to grow, right? And then you look back, maybe you don't look back, but you're in there going like, man, this thing is catching fire. It's like, you know what? I think I'm going to do more of this. So then for those people watching, who maybe have already started with Amazon, they're already doing it, right? They've had some limited success, and now they're kind of reaching a bit of a ceiling, which I think you described before about you reach different ceilings that you go through. So whatever comes up, right? Maybe the first ceiling that you remember that pops up for you, like how do you overcome or find a way through that ceiling, and maybe first identify what those ceilings are that you ran into along the way?
Yeah, and this is going to be true of a lot of different businesses. Pretty much every business model, the first ceiling is going to be yourself, right? Like getting yourself out of the operations of the business so you can focus on things that are more valuable, right? And I know a lot of $5-6 million a year Amazon sellers who don't hire a single person at all. They don't even have a single virtual assistant, or they just have one virtual assistant, right? And they're the ones who are going and answering customer messages and pulling reports and doing all this kind of stuff that's so easy for someone to do in the Philippines for much less than they're paying themselves, for sure. So that was my biggest roadblock, and it's one that continually more and more happens. Like the larger your business grows, the more things that you should let go of. And so like on the most basic level, the first kind of ceiling that I hit there was just getting myself out of like operations, right? Like client fulfillment is the most important thing to kind of get off your plate, right? It's the easiest. But then I hit that same barrier over and over again at a few points, because the larger your business becomes, then you have to start to hire out things that you're actually good at. Right? So now you're hiring out that it's like, I'm pretty good at marketing, but now I have to hire out marketing because it's not one of my like top 2 or 3 skills, right? And then slowly, and then at some point, right, the ultimate way is to hire a CEO, right? At some point, not at that point yet, but I continue to kind of hit that ceiling, and other ceilings that we hit periodically as well, probably have done it 4 or 5 times at this point, is procedures and softwares. So like an example of that is we had the entire business operations in Trello at one point, which was working fine. And then we just started getting such a volume of orders that Trello just became absolutely impossible to manage. And it just was creating all sorts of information problems and everything like that. And Trello was just not the tool for scale. So we had to completely switch software tools as an example. And the same thing is actually happening right now, where we have everything across Monday and like some other software. Now we're looking at different like enterprise level softwares that just kind of bring everything all together, all the way through the sales process, all the way through client fulfillment and stuff like that. So that's one thing I never really anticipated, was how many times I would just have to completely switch around all of our systems and processes and software systems at every level of growth.
Yeah. And like how much, by the way, guys, so if you have a question, just think about it. In the next minute or so, we'll bring it to you. And remember, if you're there thinking like, I have a question, but it's too dumb, not true. So essentially, we all kind of spark together, right? There's this collective consciousness that kind of holds us all in. So if you think of the question, it means that someone else has thought of it too, but maybe it's too shy to ask. So remember, No question is a stupid question. If you have one, feel free just to ask, and that's to the guys over here in the studio audience. So, okay, so I'm getting an idea now of scale. I'm getting an idea of the problems that you ran into. What about ego? Like, has that ever been a problem for you? And if so, how did you deal with that one?
Oh yeah, it's come up a number of times. I'm trying to think of the best example of like ego. I mean, it can definitely get in the way, and you make some dumb decisions, right? Like, I want to focus on growing my Instagram account when I don't have actually any target market on Instagram. Like stuff like that. It's like I just want to have lots of followers, right? That's going to look so good, but at the end of the day, not a very good business decision, right? Or like at times where the business is not doing well, right? That's probably the toughest one, is when like you have a bad month or something like that with revenue, and then you just feel bad about yourself in general, right? Because like it's very hard to remove your identity as the business owner, as like, the CEO of the company or whatever. It's very hard to remove that from how the company is doing. Yeah. Right? I think it's kind of very similar to when I used to compete in downhill skateboard racing. I would feel the same way if I, crashed out of a race in the very early rounds or something like that. I would just like beat myself up over it. So that's definitely the biggest challenge with the ego. It's just like removing that from the actual, how is the business doing at any given time? Yeah,
got it. And I love the analogy to sport. So I was a big sports guy, and for me, sport is like an analogy for life. Like the two things. There's so many parallels that you can draw. That what's good for sport is good for life. So when you're saying that you maybe would flunk out or you'd crash out early round, no, like how did you bring yourself back? And perhaps if you can, link that to your Amazon business. Is it the same way that you do it?
Yeah, I love that question. But yeah, I mean, the way I ended up sorting that out, because there was actually one point when I was kind of at the peak of my longboarding competing days where I had just like was putting so much pressure on myself, and just like it was all about results I was getting at races and stuff, to the point where it was actually hurting my performance, right? I just like had so much anxiety about performance that I would make dumb mistakes, and then obviously that would just build upon that and make it worse. And I think it was actually, I want to say it's by Andy Grove. It's a book about, Andy Grove was like, a coach of Michael Jordan, I believe, or like some of the big sports players back in the day. And it was just all about having a really strong competitive mindset. And a lot of that is just really focusing on enjoying it. Right, and you'll listen to professional athletes say this all the time, that they're just going to focus on enjoying it, and it's not about the results. Like, I'm going to focus on enjoying, and everything will come, right? And that completely worked for me when it came to longboarding. Like once I read that book and started practicing some of that stuff, it's just my performance went way up, and just started like winning races or getting much better results, and not actually feeling that same pressure because I'm on the start line of the race, and I'm just like, don't really care about the outcome. Like, I'm just excited to race some other guys and have a good time, right? But consequently, just performance goes up too. So I try to apply that same thing to business. And like the way to look at that in business is to look at business as a game, right? And to do that requires you to, eat some humble pie every now and then, and like literally look at that as part of the game, right? Because it wouldn't be a fun game if you just won all the time, right? It's like, yeah. Well, I mean, it just happened very recently. Like, there was a big flash crash in the crypto market, and like I wasn't super big into crypto investments, but I ate some pretty humble pie on some. I think there are some headlines out there where it's like the biggest liquidation of long leverage trades in the history of crypto, right? And I lost a pretty good chunk of money over the past couple of days, right? But I looked at that and I just kind of smiled at it. I'm like, yep. That's part of the game. Like, I knew what I was getting into, right? And if you can look at it from that perspective, then it really is a game, Yeah.
And when the crypto market's funny, because I was in there years and years ago, but I was a guy, right, who came in at the wrong time. Sold at the wrong time, bought at the wrong time. I made some good wins, and by the way, both our Instagram lives have gone down, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So it felt like, oh, damn it. So the FOMO, that fear of missing out, right? Has that ever played a part in your life? And if so, what did you do about it? Fear of missing out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, all the time, for sure. I mean, the first one, probably like you as well, was in 2017, where I bought in crypto at the peak of the mania and then lost a bunch of money. But I mean, it comes up all the time in business too, right? Like, you see like a lot of people in the industry getting on TikTok. Like, oh, I gotta just go like create a TikTok account, start marketing on TikTok, or like Clubhouse. I gotta just get on Clubhouse and do it. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're always making business decisions on FOMO, you just start to spread yourself so thin. And that's something that I try to practice as much as possible is pushing the FOMO away and being like, oh yeah, maybe Clubhouse would be really great to put a lot of my attention to, but I mean, I have a lot of other things that are working really well that I know that are working really well, and if I take the attention away from those, then it's probably not actually a good business decision. So try to recognize the FOMO and be a little bit better about it.
Sometimes it just catches up with it, doesn't it? Far out. Now, questions, people. Anatoly, I know you've got a question. I can see it. I can see it in your face. So with the microphone, guys, probably about this distance away. Apparently, is good. We'll see. There we go. Over to you, brother.
Hello?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, yeah. It's working? Okay. Amazing. So, the question I ask in most of my podcasts, I think is an important one. Since you're an Amazon seller and you also scale businesses, what do you think the difference scaling between from 0 to 6 figures to 6 figures to 7 and 7 to 8? What would be the challenges and differences between those?
When it comes to Amazon or agencies, what do you say?
When it comes to Amazon, like scaling on Amazon.
Yeah, for Amazon, so from 0 to 6 figures, I mean, that's just getting 1 or 2 really good products out the door and kind of getting it out there. So that's really all about just finding a good product, like product research, and just getting it to market. Because you can get there to 6 figures with, 1 or 2 good products. Really requires you to figure out the basics and just kind of learn everything. From getting to 6 to 7 figures is about scaling your brand, right? So like now that you have a few products that are working well, what are the next products that I can really do and really continue to scale, right? And you can get to 7 figures with less than 10 products and just kind of repeat what you did with your first products. From 7 to 8, in fact, I don't think I have seen any 8-figure companies that haven't figured out this part is team. Right, so like how do you take the process that you learned through launching more products to get to 7 figures and then pass that off to a team so that you can be more leveraged with the time that you're spending stuff on. And really, I've never met a company that has reached 8 figures that is just a solo one-man company.
Yeah, thank you. Amazing. Yeah.
Cool. Great question, Anatoly. Thank you, brother. So moving on. Yeah, another question over here.
Yes, I also have a question about scaling business. So, obviously, usually you try to...
Yes.
Like this. Okay, sorry. Well, I have a question specifically regarding like cash forecasting and like reinvesting money into business growth. So you already mentioned that like your first business, like you had loans and then it kind of failed. So how did you what was the situation with your second business? Like, did you have to get a loan? Like, do you recommend getting a loan, or like how, like in terms of like financial investment that is required for growth, like how would you recommend people manage that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So firstly, and this is something that did not come naturally to me, and I only really learned the financials of business through a lot of mentorship because it did not come naturally to me at all, and I made every mistake in the book. But when it comes to cash flow is just so important in any business, especially in Amazon e-commerce though, because it's really hard to project your cash flow just because of the timelines involved, right? So if you have to put, you're ordering 1,000 units from a manufacturer, you're probably going to have to put down a 30% deposit, and then 20 or 30 days later, they're going to be completed with that, and you got to pay them remaining, and then you have to pay for the shipping, and then it's going to get to Amazon, and then, 15 days later, maybe you sold through about half that inventory, and that's the point where you get your first payment from Amazon. So that's quite a long cycle, cash flow cycle you got to actually project out. So especially in e-commerce, the cash flow spreadsheet is like mandatory to really understand, and it takes a while to really figure it out and understand how the cash flow of one of these kind of businesses works. But I think, you know, even in the agency, cash flow spreadsheet is super, super important. And then the second part of that is debt, like leveraging debt, like when to leverage yourself and when not to leverage yourself. So the way I did it with that first failed business is the way you shouldn't be doing it. I was using leverage to go launch more unproven products. I definitely subscribe to the philosophy that you should only really use leverage in a business for growth. So like in sub businesses, that's advertising, right? You have a sales funnel, you have a sales method that you know that works, and you just have to amplify it through ads. What is not a good way to bring on debt is to, like, you know, I'm going to expand my business into this, you know, we're going to start offering this now, and I'm going to go take out a loan to go do that because it's not proven, right? But in the Amazon specific sense, the best way to take on debt is to just pay for inventory of your current products, right? So like you have a product that's making, you know, $30,000 a month revenue, and it's been stable and it's really good and it's proven, then go take out a loan to go buy inventory for that, right? And then use your profits to go launch new products and stuff like that. So that's kind of the safe context of a leverage in an Amazon specific sense.
Nice. Anybody else got any questions with that?
Yeah. My name is Rufat. Danny, did I right understand that you have services for Amazon sellers, yeah?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, and what your services is doing?
Yeah, like two buckets. So listing optimization. We have a full listing optimization department with product photography, video, A+ content, and copywriting. And then Amazon Ads Management is the second side of it.
Amazon what?
Amazon Ads Management. Amazon Advertising.
Advertising.
Yeah.
Okay, understand. And I have more questions.
Question away, brother. It's all good. It's all good.
You told about like champions mindset, like everywhere. But what about the people who don't have like a champions mindset, and how they can get it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I never started with that champions mindset. One of the greatest things about scaling a business is that it's going to force you to develop that champions mindset, right? Because, you know, there was times like in the first couple years of business where my mindset was not nearly as resilient as it is now, because I just had to go through some things and sort some things out, right? I think it's something that is developed through going through difficult situations. So like there was, you know, like for example, if you know, something really went wrong and I had to refund a customer for $2,000, then, you know, the first few times it happened, I was freaking out and I was losing sleep about it, and I would just like spend half an hour writing, you know, some crazy email and like talking to a team member and all this stuff. But I mean, now it doesn't faze me in the slightest, right? I just know that there's going to be a certain percentage of customers where something doesn't work out, and that's just part of it, right? And then, you know, the more and more crazy things that happen, the less it actually phases you. And it just kind of develops your mindset into a more resilient one. And like, that's not to say you can't do things like read books and all that kind of stuff too, and that's useful. But I mean, in my experience, that champion's mindset or that resiliency just came through just actually going through all the really tough things and growing a business. Like there was one time where I had to put my payroll on a credit card, right? That was a really scary thing to do, but you know, it forced me to develop my mindset a lot more. Right, and it's you know, if I could go and put payroll on a credit card and keep going, keep actually functioning my business, then the next crazy things aren't going to be as crazy.
Like it. And keep there, Rifat. Don't move. Which other books, for anyone who's starting in this, which other books would you say that you've read that you think were really great books in shedding mindset and belief, and also how to do what you do now?
Yeah, I think probably my favorite ones are just biographies about people who have built really amazing businesses. So there's The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I think it's Jeff Horowitz is the one. It's a really, really incredible book about a software company that just goes through pivot after pivot after pivot after pivot, and then I think the end result was $1 billion company or something like that. But like went through the absolute ringer as far as like keeping the business alive, which is pretty incredible. Or Shoe Dog by Phil Knight was a really interesting one. And you know, a lot of people don't know that Nike went 10 years of Phil grinding before it gained any traction at all. He was constantly like playing a shell game with his cash flow. It culminated in him like there was one crazy day where he had to like move cash between like 5 places or else his company was going to fold or be bankrupt, and then like somehow managed to do it with hours to spare. And like it's so interesting because you see Nike today and you never would have guessed that was the situation, but I find that very insightful.
Great, man. And Brother Rifat, any more questions, brother? Keep them coming, man. Keep them coming.
Yeah, I have. Can you tell more about your fuck-ups, more about your like falling downs? Yeah, and how did you come back? Like came back like this?
Yeah, another one that comes to mind is with employees. I've had some big mess ups with employees, like an operations manager, or no, it was an account manager that was just really good at making it seem like everything was going really well, but in reality was not doing a very good job. She is just very good at like looking like she's doing a good job and making it seem all okay. And my big lesson from that was to have better systems in place, to be able to tell if people are doing their job really well without actually micromanaging. So it just forced us to create really good systems like daily checklists and like actual metrics that people are responsible for inputting every single day, depending on what their position is. And then the operations manager just reviews that every single day at a single glance, can see if someone's doing their position correctly, instead of what would happen was like 2 months later, there'd be all these kind of red flags coming up, and then there's enough red flags coming up, you look into it, and then you realize that shit is hitting the fan for the past 2 months.
You're always talking about your work. Just in your life, before your work, or except your work. Do you have any fuck-ups and when you fell down? And then come back.
Yeah, I mean, probably the biggest one was like when I was in high school. I was just like really disillusioned with just like the whole society of like getting a 9-to-5 job and then just working that job till retirement and stuff. Like that was like the worst. Like just did not appeal to me at all. So I just kind of checked out from that, and like it's kind of a miracle I graduated high school through some creative external course taking there. But I pretty much spent most of my high school years just like smoking weed and drinking and going to parties, and really it was really a waste of 3 or 4 years there of my time. It wasn't really until I got super into extreme sports and just like really dove back into that, because I was really big into that when I was younger, but then extreme sports is what just kind of made me accept things a lot more, and I got back into like actually getting a decent paying job so that I could pay for more extreme sports stuff and go on more trips and things like that. So it's probably one of the bigger ones from when I was younger.
Okay, thank you.
Great questions, Rifat. Thank you, my brother.
So for people who are listening or watching or whatever they're streaming at, and they're like, yeah, Danny did it, he made a business, but I'm just working 9 to 5, my days look the same, I don't know how I can get out of this rat race. We played a game of cash flow recently, so it was rat race, that's why this came to mind. Like for these people who are just like, I want to start it, but there's no way I know how to do it, and I'm afraid, I'm like I have no idea what to do. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say to work the night hours, right? Because actually, it probably took me, I think it was about 8 months of me also working my job as a carpenter before I just quit that job and was full-time with my business. So for 8 months, I was doing both. I was just working full-time job and then coming home and then working until 10 p.m. and going to bed and waking up at 6 a.m. And I mean, that's really the only way to do it, unless you have a big chunk of savings where you can just afford to just live off of that and focus on your business, right? And like, I certainly don't think it's a good idea to get investors for your first business. I think it's a terrible idea. Investors, in 90% of cases that people want investors, make absolutely no sense. So yeah, and I would just say too that I don't think there's ever going to be a point where it just feels like it's the right time to do it, because myself, I was lucky enough to have this near-death experience where it just kind of jolted me into doing it. But, not everyone is going to be so lucky to have like an inflection point where it's like, now is the time to do it. Because there was like six or 8 months before that point where I was just learning, like constantly learning, listening to podcasts, and like I knew I wanted to do something, but it just wasn't the right time or whatever reason. There was always some reason. I don't think that day ever comes where now is the perfect day for anybody. I've never talked to anyone who just had that realization, just, you know what, today is the day to start, right? So like that has to be your decision.
And Anatoly, so would love you to take a moment to tell people the name of your podcast and what it does. 'Cause I think what is fascinating, right? And I think people here will get a lot of value out of it.
Sure. I scale my business to 10 million, and it's my journey. So recording my podcast is called 10 Million Journey. So I'd record my journey, how I get to 10 million, and I talk to amazing people who are several steps ahead, and I pick up their brain about strategies, tactics, mindset, anything else about it. And then, it's called 10 Million Journey everywhere where you can find podcasts. Thank you. Man. Free advertising. Thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Of course you can. As many as you want.
So I'm reading a book about Tony Robbins because one of the guests actually recommended it, and he has this good question that I haven't tried yet. So I want to ask you and see how it's going to go. It's my first time asking that question, so I will be scared. But what beliefs have you held before in your business or personal life that you don't hold anymore that you think is like complete bullshit now?
Yeah, a really good one is like paying for mentorship. In my first couple years in business, I had a big aversion to paying for mentorship in places where like, hey, I could probably learn this for free on YouTube. And it's true that today we have access to way more free information than any other time in history, and that's amazing. But that's also a problem too, because there's just such a volume of it that it can actually be very confusing and overwhelming. And the solution to that is to just pay a mentor who, either has like a very specific course for you, or is like just a very specific mentor that you can work with, and they can help you out specifically for you, right? Because the problem with all this free content is that it just shiny object syndrome central is usually what happens if you're only focused on that. So like the past couple of years, I've made a big shift and just have invested a lot more in mentors, like paid mentors. Like this year alone, I've already invested more than $100,000 in mentors. And like in the past, I'd be like, what? Are you serious? Like, it's just such a waste of money. You could go find this on YouTube and everything. But like, so many benefits to just actually investing in the mentorship where you need it. And I think, it's been a huge shift for me, just like recognizing that I should just put a percentage of my income towards mentorships at every single stage, right? Once these ones are done, I'm going to find the next ones.
Love it.
Amazing. I'll keep the question. I think it's an amazing one.
That's a great question, brother, man. Yeah, I'll be using that one too. Awesome. Love it. Anatoly, come on down. Love it. So look, Danny, so where can people find you? So if they want to say, hey, I've listened to this guy, Danny, I love his vibe, love his approach to life, and I reckon he's the kind of guy I can work with, right? So how can they find you? What's the best way?
Yeah, so for the Amazon stuff, just the agency website is probably the best place. So KenjiROI.com, KenjiROI. Or if you just want to reach out to me personally, probably Instagram would be the best place. I am Danny Carlson on Instagram. That's pretty much it.
Cool. And have you got anything coming up, any workshops or courses or something?
What I got coming up is just a couple more months of keeping my head down and really focus on a few projects. Trying not to get as much shiny object syndrome as possible.
It's funny, when you're talking, I was having a conversation with my girl, Marina. Marina, we've been together for 8 years, 2 kids, 4 and 6. And Marina comes from a very logical mindset. I'm a little bit shiny object syndrome. Oh no, you described me. And so the tricky part for me, as it might be for you, is that we can be good at so many different things, right? But then, what is that thing if we have to specialize to say, well, that is the thing that I'm going to break through in? Or is it the case that it's like, well, I can still have all of these activities and attributes and skills, and what I can do is that when I'm focusing on one, I'm focusing on one, and I can break through in that. And then when I'm not focusing on that, I'm focusing on another one, and I can break through to that, right? So we're having this conversation, and it was interesting because, I obviously interview a lot of people. And each time when I come home, it's like, I learned this today, right? And then I feel for her, right? Because she's a logical person who's very good at what she does. Love her to death, not to death, but love her. And, she's got this great mind. But she's got the left and right brain operating at the same time, which I think is very unique. So she's logical, but also creative. But yeah, so the conversation that we had was one of like, yeah, but as you mentioned, the shiny object syndrome, which I didn't have a name for it, but kind of like now I do, shiny object syndrome. It just feels like I like have so much of it. So how do you keep yourself, or do you believe that you need to keep yourself focused on doing the one thing, or are you, well, I can do many things, it's just what I choose to do at the time? How does it operate for you?
Yeah, well, my role as CEO is it changes a lot, right? Like whatever the business demands is constantly changing. So, my role definitely shifts a lot. But what is really important is having someone who balances it out, right? So there's a great series of books by Gino Wickman called Traction that explains the relationship between a visionary and an integrator. So those are kind of like two sides of that coin. Like myself, and it sounds like you as well, would definitely fall into the visionary category, like always generating new ideas and like wanting to go in all these different directions, and really great at doing that. But then like when it comes to actually putting the pedal to the pavement and actually implementing all that stuff, you just can't implement it nearly the rate you're generating the ideas, right? So the integrator, or operations manager or COO would be some typical integrators. That's the person who really balances out the CEO, the visionary person, and that relationship I think is super, super important. So in our company, that's the operations manager, who is the integrator, who can kind of balance that out. And if I start to see that they're really struggling with too many things, then it's a clear sign to me that it's like, okay, we need to maybe not go and open up a Twitter account and all this other random stuff that I keep coming up with.
Love the random. So guys, does anyone else have any questions? Feel free. We're good. Awesome. So look, guys, so what happens now is that, so we're beginning to close the show, and the way we do it is that we ask our guest, which is you, my man, to basically say some words. So something that resonates with you. It might be something that you've said already and you just want to repeat it for added impact, or it might be something which I haven't mentioned that yet, and I would love to talk about that because I think it's important, or it might be something completely random left of field, right? So in a moment or so you'll get the opportunity to do that, and then after that we'll close the show. All right, so you got about a minute roughly. So for those of you watching here and there and there and there and there, welcome. Thank you so much for your time. I'm trusting that you've learned some incredible things. I've learned a few new terms. Shiny object syndrome is one. I've learned about the importance of mentoring, right? 100,000, right? Just that continual learning to overcome ceilings that you can sometimes, well, not that you sometimes, that you will basically come into, right, or come up against. So super powerful. I love your the way you see life. I love the way that you've managed to split, to separate this passion and the thing that I do, which I also enjoy, but a thing that I do for a living, which then allows me to enjoy my passion so much more. I love the fact that, you took that moment, right, where it's a near-death experience is what we call it, and you took that moment to say, you know what, something needs to change. And I'm going to make that change. I'm going to be the change that I see. And look where you've come. And what cracks me up is that it was your backup plan. It was a backup plan that ended up being the one, right? So a lot of people out there think that, hey, no need for me to have a backup plan. Well, guess what? Backup plan for this guy paid dividends big time. So maybe reconsider your backup plan, because it might become the plan. And look, the last thing that I want to say is that, so remember, we have 3 different SpeakuPs going on at the moment. This is Destination Indonesia that we do here at Tropical Nomad every Monday, 6:30 p.m. GMT plus 8. Now, tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., Tuesday, it's an early start, 7 a.m., we have Clubhouse version, which tomorrow is Tarek Kalusi. It's all about creating community. That's what this whole week is about. Tarek is amazing. Nomad's giving back. Nomad's Skillshare. Thousands of people in his community. Amazing guy. So join us there. SpeakuP Monday group, or SpeakuP Monday, group on Clubhouse. And then later on this week on Thursday, we have a great podcast live stream with a guy called Jason Scott Thompson, who's known as a Circle Man, and he's an incredible guy I've known for many years, and he's all about reconnecting circles that connect all of us together regardless of our color, age, race, background, and so on. So that's going to be an incredible conversation. That takes place 10 a.m. on Thursday, GMT plus 8. Any of this, SpeakuP Monday group has all the information. So, without further ado, thank you to Tropical Nomad, Brother Itchy, Guzman, Bella. We were a little bit late this week, but it doesn't matter, man. You're here with us. You were supposed to be here, that's good. Or catch it on replay. Share this, guys. This year we're going to be going really strongly to make sure we make it the best year ever, creating some really great information for you to take and to actually exercise and use and get amazing results from. So, without further ado, Brother Danny, thank you so much, man, for being you, that crazy, cool, focused, massive success individual that I used to see coming on your amazing bike. I'm like, that's a cool bike. And just seeing you, like, you're passionate about what you do, and you're very present. I notice with you, like, when you speak, the eyes stay right there. Like, it's just super present, that speaks volumes. So, brother, man, thank you very much. I acknowledge you for being amazing, my man. So, over to you, brother. Thanks again.
Oh, my pleasure, man. Really happy to come on here and have an awesome conversation. And yeah, I guess the final thing I'd like to say to everybody here is, one thing that people say to me very commonly is, or they'll ask this question, like, is it too late to start selling on Amazon in 2021? Like, have I missed the boat? Is it now too competitive or whatever? And my answer to that is pretty simple, is when I started selling on Amazon in 2016, at the beginning of 2016, people were saying the exact same thing, right? It's like, oh, it's too late. I should have started selling in 2012. But I mean, look back on that. It's ridiculous, right? 2016 would have been an amazing time to sell on Amazon. And my point here is that 2021 is that same time, right? If you look at e-commerce in general and the amount of growth that is left to go for e-commerce and for Amazon, we're still like not even halfway down the curve, right? We're still a very small percentage of overall retail sales in the world, and there's still so many countries that Amazon hasn't really expanded to. And the EU marketplace is now the same size as the American marketplace. Like, it's rapidly growing and not going to stop anytime soon. So absolutely is not too late to start in 2021 in the grand scheme of things.
Great, brother. Man, thank you very much. Round of applause, everybody. Thank you for coming. See you next week. Hoo-yah! Man, give it up. Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, that was fun, man. Thanks for having me on.